my voice is already gone day one. So, but honestly, this is the greatest setup we've ever had. We got to do a day early for all the important stuff like the rigging and all that, and then the staff has just been Tong Lee and all the staff he's hired, man. It's been amazing. It's like nobody lost a step. It feels really good, man. Like I just want people to see that we can bring events back, take all the precautions, hope that everyone plays it safe.
Mikey!
Community Effort Orlando. Beginning in 2010, CEO has gone on to become one of the tentpole events of the fighting game community, as well as a banner for the local Florida scene to rally under. And while it has soared to heights some could never imagine, its origin stemmed from another event that almost imploded before it could get off the ground.
So the Florida scene back in like 2010 and 2008 was really all sort of me and David Richardson, who kind of took a back seat. And I was running locals. I was just doing Jebailey Presents or Orlando FGC Presents before CO became a name. And at the time, Florida was kind of the black sheep. We only had really one good player, Trent Van Deven. Alex Walbert was another CVS2 training partner. But at the time, it was mostly arcade tournaments. There weren't any major locals. If you look in the history of fighting games, New York, Chinatown, #1. California, Sunnyvale, San Francisco, NorCal, SoCal. Texas was huge. And then what's Florida got? Just local events, but none of us traveled outside of like final round.
It was interesting because it was still forming, right? So Florida never really was a part of a specific coast. It was always like this external series to kind of go to. And we always had awesome players come through, would always come through and play in different times and come out tournaments. But before there was actually like legitimate tournament series, like I think we only had like one semi-major.
2008 comes out. Street Fighter 4 gets announced, right? And GameStop put out an event. And Shuriken forums were all the rage back then. There was no Facebook groups, there was no real social media. And having an event like that, even though it's not run by FGC standards, gets so many new eyes on it at a big company like GameStop. It was great to see that on a bigger stage. And after that, I was like, I'm gonna go to my first EVO. And after EVO that year, I was only running locals because nobody else really was in Orlando. We had the old arcade days, but a lot of those TOs moved on. CEO was never officially named until about 2 years of me doing locals and monthly events. 2008, 2009 comes, I go to EVO, I get experiencing a bigger tournament, how it's run. And I was doing locals where at a time, G.A.M.M.E was a guy named Manny Camacho who came out of nowhere. Hey, I've got a $5,000 prize pool, I've got Daigo coming. And at the time, $5,000 was a lot of money to us in the FGC. That's a lot of bread, as we would say.
We hadn't had a large issue of like overseas players coming out to Florida events because they were obviously all extremely local. And then the few events that we did have that were considered more towards, I guess, catered towards a major, those events at least got to see players come from different coasts, but we hadn't had everybody here at one time. It just hasn't been a thing. So the organizer promised that and then some. Was pretty much saying with our cooperation that they would do this and that, and they just want someone from the scene to essentially help.
He puts this event together and I'm his right-hand man. I'm doing these locals, he's promoting himself. He was legit at the time. He was bringing equipment, everyone felt good about this event. And then just the negativity started coming out behind the scenes. He was starting to say, yeah, I don't have all this stuff. And the forum was going nuts. And then he officially just comes out and is like, yeah, I can't do this event, sorry guys. And kind of takes off with everyone's registration money, basically leaving us with nothing.
It put a really bad taste in the scenes because a lot of people actually put a lot of money into coming to the event already. So Alex's idea was that let's try to at least save face for Florida. You know, we've already been doing tournaments and so forth.
Jonathan Graybeal had reached out to me and goes, hey, if I help you find a venue, would you want to finance it and we'll put it together? I'm like, yeah, let's see what we can find. We had 3 weeks of time to put this together. And I was shopping around. I'd never talked to a hotel for a contract or a ballroom. And the only thing I could find was the Central Florida Fairgrounds. It had a hut, 10,000 square foot, just like indoor hut that they would do other events at. And I booked it. It was like $3,000 to book this venue. Today's standards, venue can cost you 100 grand. Put it together with 3 weeks. We had a huge forum, like, what are we gonna name this event? Game over, game on, continue, all these different names. And I'll never forget, I was just, laying in bed. I'm like, you know what? If I'm gonna take control of this is a community effort. We're in Orlando and just CEO. And it just stuck. And I went in the forum like, hey, let's call this Community Effort Orlando. CEO and everyone's like, book it, done. And that became the name. 2 weeks, and really at the time, we just wanted a fun event. We ended up with like 250 players, and a lot of local guys were just there to support and play.
And it was in a airplane hangar slash animal barn at a state fair kind of deal. And it was hot and there was no AC. It wasn't the CEO that you would think of today.
It was hot, but it was actually really dope because to see a mass amount of people in just one spot, that then for me was kind of like what CEO is to someone who goes to it like right now for the first time. As throwback as it was with a projector on the wall and like very few candy cabs, like nowhere near what it is now. But even then, it was still like mind blowing. And then to see all these people like, oh, I know this dude, FGC Flash, he's nasty in Guilty Gear with G.A.M.E. He's the one who I used to try to like get the combos off of. Oh, look, that's big name Justin Hoang and stuff like that. So even seeing like people like that of that caliber, like just there, just nonchalantly, it was just like, oh wow, this is like a dope community to be a part of.
I really liked competing more than anything, more than being a TO. I had so much fun playing Street Fighter 4 and seeing my friends. And the beauty of fighting games is there's always something new to learn. So at the time, nobody else was really ready to step up and run a bigger event and kind of invest outside of like community run events. So if there's no tournaments to run, there's no tournaments to compete in. After the success of that event, I'm like, you know what? I still have a few years left of me competing, but let me build CEO as something more than just that one tournament.
I remember literally shutting the garage doors, closing down the event. Everything's already said and done. And I remember Alex turned around and he was just like, you know, this is it. Like you never know what's gonna happen from here. But you could feel the energy in the room as it was starting. Like it felt like a rhythm was already being begun and you just didn't realize it. And, you know, fast forward to now, so I was like, wow, it's cool.
So honestly, right now we're actually going over how to give out all the medals, the prizes, take their payment information, everything, and pretty well-oiled machine, honestly. Yesterday was great. I asked how everyone thought day one was, and besides stuff out of our control, everyone's having the time of their lives. And the team's killing it, man. I haven't had to stress a single thing. Nobody bothered me from the hours of 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. Perfect event.
No one bothered him because everybody bothered me. That's just generally how it goes.
We're pretty much 70% of the way through the actual tournaments, which is the hardest part of this event. And registration, you know, just put on record, we've maybe turned away like 20 out of 3,000 people to go get a negative test right away that either forgot their Vax card or they didn't know what they needed. So for the most part, like a 95% success compliance rate that it makes us feel really good. It's hard. It's really hard to run an event during a pandemic, to be honest with you. Everything can go wrong. People can back out for legitimate reasons, but for the most part, this team is just... We're actually doing better now than we did pre-COVID as a team, so I couldn't be happier.
Hailing from Louisiana, the master of the pipe himself, Ramasama!
That's big praise. That's big praise from the song.
If you were to ask many players in the fighting game community to name some of the biggest events in the scene, 3 names would probably come to mind. EVO for its spectacle, legacy, and ability to attract all of the best players in the world, Combo Breaker for its festival-like atmosphere and the sheer number of games and scenes it strives to accommodate, and CEO for its unique aesthetic blending fighting games and wrestling into a powerful combination. Wrestling is in CEO's DNA and is found in everything the event strives to do, from staging and trophies to even entrances for finalists.
In 2010, we had a crappy stage where it's like a faint projector on a wall. Our prizes were like these tiny trophies, and I bought purest Himalayan salt as the second place prizes. That year was just put on a fun event, don't worry about production, all that. The second year happens, and I'm going to other events and I'm realizing it's a stage deck, it's a truss, it's a light, and the players, and that's it really. And then you go to an EVO and you see them step it up every year, which inspired me to go, all right, EVO is what it is because of its production, because of its lore. How can I separate CO from that?
Wrestling became a focal point after Alex and I met, which would have been through the Ultimate Fighting Game Tournament Series, and he commissioned Focus Fire to try to kind of make CEO a bigger or more efficient product. During that time, we've found a mutual appreciation for professional wrestling that was strong and has lasted to this day. Started talking about wrestling tropes and the conventions we were working together, and I wound up making a CEO logo that was a riff on the New World Order logo from WCW. And once it was the theme of the show, as well, what kind of presentation spectacle could we afford to add to this that fits that theme? Can we get a hold of a wrestling ring? Can we afford a wrestling ring? Cheaper to rent than I thought. That fits in budget? Nah, but we'll make it work, which is Alex's response to most things. And so we wound up with a wrestling ring and a wrestling themed logo that automatically put us towards having kind of character entrances and other wrestling tropes as part of the show, and that became CEO's early brand.
Even just seeing the ring being set up for the first time was pretty amazing because, it just hadn't happened. And I'm pretty sure the original ring was a boxing ring too. And I remember just sitting there for the setup and I was like, this is going to be a pretty amazing weekend.
And I think Evo, when they were doing their East-West stuff, they had like a boxing ring as a stage. And they gave out a championship belt, and that's where I went with the championship belt in 2012. The first year we had belts was just one belt. Justin Hoang is the official first belt ever owner. King of Chinatown crew had shelled out to buy this belt, and they gave the belt to Justin. Justin loved it, and that's where I'm like, all right, I gotta start shelling out for this. But back then, didn't have that kind of budget. For an estimation, I just ordered 22 belts for this year's event. Something along that line. It's about $5,000 to put these belts together. And at the time didn't have that kind of money. So the next year I'm looking online, like where can I get belts from, and do it year round. And I had found proambelts.com. And at the time they were just a starting company. They've made UFC's belts, they've made some other belts, they make a lot of custom belts. And I had reached out to Joshua Ratkin and I'm like, hey, how can I customize the belts? He's like, oh, we can do it from scratch. And Rick designed these belts. He's designed every single year.
And the first year out, we got a sponsorship from One Frame Link to kind of help out with some of the volunteer pipeline system that had been set up on the event, but provided just enough funding that we could go and try to get a belt made. The response to that was huge. And so year after year, we have tried to do more belts for more games or bigger and better belts.
People loved that thing. And one year we sold a couple as a VIP package. I actually gave as a thank you Tony Khan one from AEW and he loved it. So just seeing that happiness that something like that can bring.
It's just far enough. It's a hard time connecting. Does it? Ray 3-0 under the ringside is going to be our CEO 2021 champion.
So it's just something that stuck, and CEO goes hand in hand with ring, entrances, and belts.
That's right, the Grand Poo Fantasy God himself. Are you ready? The human pyramid attack.
So CEO, once it decided it was going to be wrestling themed, wanted to embrace that with all of the tropes that come with wrestling fandom. So we have a wrestling ring, we have the closest representation of a Titantron, and we have top 8 entrances where people can pick out music, walk through the crowd, present themselves in a showman capacity. And in the first couple of years, that wasn't fully embraced by the players. And then it became an objective goal in the community. I've talked to people where having a CEO top 8 entrance is one of the things they want to do as a fighting game player. And I think part of that is we started having themed entrances within the themed wrestling event that pushed on that and made it really high visibility and attractive.
My personal favorite entrance is probably going to be Dominion. When Dominion just kind of appeared on the stage after the lights went out, that blew me away.
But where is his opponent? He's already on stage! Dominion!
To this day, I get a little giddy about it. Just laugh about how exciting that was, trying to feel the things that I did that day when I saw that. Second favorite, of course, would be K-Brad, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
That was good. Oh,
we got a stunner already to start things off. Dayasha thought he was here to play some Marvel and call some matches, but no.
When we had K-Brad do the Stone Cold Steve Austin entrance, catching monster cans in his hands, and Stone Cold Steve Austin shouted that out.
Hey, K-Brad, I give you a shout out. You blew my Twitter account up, Steve Austin BSR, and I appreciate you still remembering what I was doing way back in the day when you was still a youngster. Nice job at the office, and swig a beer for the gaming man.
That was the first foray of like the CEO name getting out to wrestling fans. Like, oh, what the hell is this event? And wrestling fans love fighting games. It just went hand in hand.
Oh boy!
Yo, he's throwing them.
So I am the free roaming camera operator. What that means is I have a camera that I follow all of the players. So all the player entrances, everything else that's going on outside of the scope of the ring, that's me. It's difficult in that there's a sense of like the unknown. A lot of the players want to be super creative and they want to do cool things, and we don't really know ahead of time. They just kind of like sporadically, I'm coming out and I got a group of 10 people, or coming out and I've got this sign or whatever. So it's difficult in that you don't know what's going to happen, but at the same time, you just got to roll with the punches. Everybody, when they talk about CEO, you think of the iconic entrances, right? You got K-Brad Stone Cold, and you got the Dominion where he blinks into the ring. My personal favorite is actually Mars from Super Smash Brothers. The reason that is he came out by himself, he's yucking it up, he's playing it to the crowd, and as we get to the ring, he's walking and he stops, and he turns back and looks at me, and he goes like this. When you're a cameraman, there's two worlds, what's in the viewfinder and what's outside of it. So the fact that he turned and looked back at me, I took that as the cue of he's about to do something, and he did that perfectly out of frame. So by me following him and panning down and seeing it, the crowd went absolutely nuts. And that's like that one-on-one connection. So like, yeah, there's big grand entrances and there's these elaborate things that are set up, but that little thing, he knew he was playing to the camera. And by doing that, we connected, I saw it, panned down, got it, and got everybody. It was just amazing. It was a hilarious moment.
What makes a good entrance? I could say all the generic terms like hype, funny, things like that, but honestly, it's really about how deep the player kind of goes into character for those entrances. I feel like that's really what's important. How much fun they're having. If they're having fun, I feel like the whole crowd is having fun.
Originality, crowd interaction, and then just like that it factor. Sometimes people just have, like they just have the ability to just sell a good intro, almost like a wrestling event or like any sporting event that has some kind of intro base. But you know, of course with the FGC, they usually take it to the max.
Energy. You have to have the energy to like pull people in behind you. So it's like, it is that sense of showmanship, especially if you're planning on mimicking like your idol, you gotta throw in the same swagger that they've thrown in and try to top it even. So it's always great to see everybody try to bring that.
And at the end of the day, it's your entrance. You may only get to do it this one time in your life, or maybe you'll do it multiple times. But either way, it's your entrance. You should have a good time doing it. And we should know you're having a good time doing it.
You're taking all of the best parts of wrestling and adding it to the best parts of our community. And you're creating a weird marriage. And that's what happened with CEO.
Oh, but aggressively coming out there, but he puts himself in a big whip punish position. Lucar losing UI Goku there. Hook Gang got capitalizing. Through as he does, he gets the hit. He's gonna build the bar and he's gonna seal the deal. He doesn't even need to worry about much else because he gets to move forward into loser side of top 8, shutting it down here. Lucar's run coming to again. Once again, the alarm setting off.
And you know, when I'm like,
Can everybody hear me? Yeah! All right. So, while we wait, that doesn't mean we can't compete. So let's get a line this way, and if y'all want to play rock, paper, scissors, we at least got that. On this side, who wants to go first? You with the CEO shirt. All right, let's go. Who on this side wants to go first? Rock, paper, scissors, shoot!
CEO CEO's presentation and atmosphere set it apart from the rest of the events in the fighting game community and allows it to attract all sorts of unique personalities. One of these being professional wrestler Kenny Omega, who would not only enter CEO to compete, but also to settle the score with an old rival in one of the most memorable FGC moments ever.
There's 2 moments that I would say put CEO on the radar for me. Maybe 3. One was the K-Brad Stone Cold entrance. When I saw that, I thought, man, like these guys know wrestling, and if they're gonna go that far to reproduce like a Stone Cold Steve Austin entrance and they're fighting in a ring, these guys must like wrestling. Like that's pretty cool. I don't know why it baffled me so much. Probably because like this is in a moment where wrestling just wasn't cool anymore. Things have kind of come full circle and it's more accepted now. But at that time I was like, geez, I'm shocked. Then I think it was Gutex actually, and/or Mike Ross. They were saying that, hey, you'd like this guy named Jebailey. He's a huge wrestling fan and he pretty much runs his show like a wrestling event. We should put you guys in touch. You could probably do something real cool together. And then third, which is somewhat unrelated to wrestling, it was Dominion's entrance at CEO, where I was like, okay, this isn't like a parody of wrestling, but it goes to show that there's a degree of showmanship and that these guys are not only trying to play fighting games to the highest level, but they're actually trying to be showmen while they're at it. And I appreciated that because I think characters in sports, that's what allows you to transcend said sport or said activity. You have to be something that people want to talk about. And so for an event like that to exist and for these characters like that and personalities to exist in that world, it just made fighting games much more fun and made me want to be a member of the fighting game community. When Kenny came to CEO in 2016, it wasn't as here's a wrestling celebrity, come meet Kenny Omega. It was Kenny Omega's FGC, man, through and through, right? He Japanese arcades, he knows how to play Street Fighter very well. And it was just connecting with him through DMs thanks to Cross Counter. He was on an episode of Cross Counter and I just like, hey, big fan of your work. And he's like, I love CEO, I'd love to come out if my schedule works. And brought him out and he just came as a fan and as a player. At that time, I was really gearing towards my debut at New Japan, brand new character. At that point, they'd sort of kept weight divisions separate. So when we weren't focusing on the junior division, which that's where I was at the time, I kind of had a little bit of time off. At that moment, I think, in 2015, I was holding the junior championship belt, or at least I was up there. We had the G1, we had heavyweight tag tournaments. There are things that focus primarily on the heavyweight division in New Japan. So I wouldn't necessarily have those off completely, but I would have a lot of shows off in comparison to the heavyweight guys. So it just so happened that, I had this pocket of time off. And when I had contacted Jebailey and saw that CEO fell upon dates where I could possibly make it, I thought, this is a blessing in disguise for me not to be wrestling. I'd love to come down. And I wasn't looking for handouts. I wasn't looking for, the red carpet he rolled out. I just wanted to be part of the event. I just wanted to come out for my first actual real tournament and check it out.
I've heard them ask the question, what would happen if he fought? What would happen if they fought? Jebailey is making it happen. At CEO 2016, Kenny Omega will be there. Will you?
So yeah, I signed up for Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 5. At that time, the Cruiserweight Classic was going on for NXT. And so one of my buddies, Michael Nakazawa, who was working as a translator there, he was able to come down and kind of like hang out with me while I was going through the bracket and you just kind of see how it was like and watch and cheer me on. I made new friends that were willing to team up with me for the team event that year too. I remember our first match was against, and it was never streamed unfortunately, but it was like Daigo, Fudo, and Kazunoko against like me, LPN, and Stupendous. I remember like, man, like I think if we play our best, we got a chance. And I remember like, for me, like the hugest thing was like, I took a round off of Kazunoko and then I lost, but it was just like, that sort of feeling was just so incredible. It was a lot of fun. And then of course, the huge thing, which was the arrival of Xavier Woods as well, which kind of made it something completely different. It evolved my experience there to the nth degree.
I personally had what it takes to what... Oh,
you gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me.
He's like, hey, Xavier might be able to come down because he'll be here for a wrestling show the next day. And this is a New Japan wrestler, a WWE guy. You never see them crossing paths.
Let's fight
You're right, it
like
is trash.
gentlemen.
Okay, let me wipe my hands off, boogers.
Ooh!
Wow!
That's
Wow.
right.
Okay.
Get the stick. Get the stick,
You know
Austin.
what? You
Start
know
to
what?
throw down.
You know what? Okay,
I'm
let's do this.
sick
Let's do
and
this.
tired.
I'm done with you, Ken.
I had actually done a quick little mini, I don't know if it was a YouTube thing, where I had actually met Xavier at a barcade in New York. I believe the videos had to be taken down. They had to be deleted. There's no evidence of them ever existing anymore. But because we had ended up in the same place at the same time, we'd filmed a couple little skits where we would fight each other in actual games. And we left it as a cliffhanger ending, and we had tied it into Street Fighter V because that game had yet to have been released, and we thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if down the road we fought each other in a fighting game, an actual fighting game, and Street Fighter V is coming out, let's play that. We had just kind of let it sit and there's no opportunity to do it. We just thought maybe it's cool enough that we just left it wide open like that and there's never going to be a conclusive, decisive victor in the end. But then this fell into our laps where I had that weekend off, I was there. Xavier was either there or very close by and could make the event. And the rest is history.
He actually might be in chip that territory. With super. Oh, is he over it?
Oh, no!
He is! Does he get a punish? A chance! A chance either way! No!
And Xavier, oh, he's popping off! He's popping off! Somebody calm him down up there!
And it was very funny to see how it played out. As a fan, seeing it unravel right there in front of you, it was no like other experience. It felt like being at a live show.
Again,
Oh,
what is it?
no!
Oh, wow! That
Oh,
might
my
have worked!
goodness!
No!
What is going on?
I thought it was cool that even though we weren't the highest level players, that they appreciated that we took the time to learn the game and that we did our best to have an entertaining match where, you know, some fans could cheer for one, some fans could cheer for the other, and you weren't going to know who was actually going to win. Again, for Xavier to take time out of his schedule to come out to actually give a finale to the story that we had created back who knows when in New York at a barcade, it was a real special time.
It was incredible. Sitting on the back wall where we were next to, if I'm correct, JT was working the music and the sound at the time. So we were sitting on like the perch booth on the right side wall, and you could just see a sea of people, just wall to wall. It's massive. Just the incredibility of the growth of where it's come from. Like if you look at the original CEO sign, and then you look at that photo, you would be like the time gap. Like if you were like a time traveler, you'd be like, whoa, a lot's happened since then.
CEO's growth has been so strong, it has allowed the brand to expand into new events, such as CEO Taku, which focuses on anime titles and themes, as well as CEO Dreamland, an event centered around Smash and the platform fighter scenes. The growth has also affected its venue. While the event is called Community Effort Orlando, CEO is currently held in Daytona Beach's Ocean Center as they outgrew their old venue. And with a new home came new challenges, as well as an exciting opportunity to take CEO's relationship with wrestling to a whole other level.
Based on the numbers, the CEOs leading up to that, I actually signed that contract for Daytona like a year before CEO 2017, because I'll never forget when 2016 was, lack of a better term, a shit show in terms of space. We actually lost a lot of players in the following year, 2017, because 2016 was so packed. But Daytona ended up being just a much better option in terms of cost. Venues are expensive more than ever, especially with COVID, AV production, internet, and Daytona just offered so much more, and their staff was incredible to work with. It was probably the easiest venue I've ever worked with, and I've worked with a lot of venues through DreamHack and myself.
That's the same arena that they used to host WCW in back in the 90s. It's an historic arena, so like I think that just being in that venue in general was an exciting moment.
When Alex told me he was getting Daytona, he told me the size of the venue. And he told me, you know, the commitment he made toward the fighting game community. I said he was crazy. I totally said he was crazy. If you're not familiar with the Ocean Center, it's got a huge, a huge arena, and it's got everything you need when you need to step it up. And I'm one of the ones who is, I wouldn't say risk averse, but I'm always like, oh, you sure you want to do that? Yeah. I said, what about the hotel? He's like, yeah, I got the whole hotel across the street too. And I'm like, what? You did? Like all these people? I'm like, are they gonna come to Daytona? He's like, yeah, whatever. We'll figure it out. I'll get buses. I'll get transportation to get them from the various airports to Daytona. So we created the trailer, and we got a lot of people to go from to either land in Orlando, land at Daytona. We got them out to the Daytona venue. And it's not a short trip. It's a good 90 minutes on the road from the airport. So that was the big hurdle. I wasn't sure it was going to pop off the way it did, and it worked great.
It was awesome to see his vision kind of like play out, like how he wanted to do things and how like the caliber that he wanted to get it to. And especially with that move being such a big one that it was, also incorporating like the first show with Kenny and all of the wrestlers and stuff like that.
And in 2018, I think it was like a few months after CEO, I'm like, Kenny, I have a arena now. What do you think about a New Japan show or something like that? He's like, let me talk to the company.
I feel like in 2017 when Xavier and I had played Tekken and we couldn't do it on stage, we had to do it sort of in private. I had sort of thought that 2016 was so successful, and I'd felt that it was so fun for us, and it was fun for a lot of people watching, that I felt it was a shame that we couldn't do more for them in 2017 when they knew that we were there. So to go from a very successful 2016 to 2017 where everything had to be kind of done in secrecy, I'd felt that there's gotta be a way to do more. Even if I can't outright do it publicly with Austin Creed, there's gotta be something we can do. And then when we had heard about Daytona Beach, when we'd seen how big the venue was, that it actually had an arena with proper seating, the ability to have proper lighting and decent sized production, I had thought, this is a great chance. For me, on my side, trying to think like in a business sense, New Japan was already trying to posture to make waves in the USA, and they wanted to do more shows in the US, but they just didn't have a way to do it. I thought that if we don't have anything official set in stone right now to go to America, this might be a cool way, even if it's only semi-official, to introduce some New Japan stars to an American audience, and also gave me an excuse to be part of the event as well.
We announced the show maybe like March or whatever, and the biggest hardships of it was I can't afford to fly out New Japan itself to put on the show. I don't have the referees, so we had to do a lot of local outsourcing. And we had our hardships with mostly the production leading into it, getting everything ready for the ring.
So when I had presented New Japan with the opportunity to do this, they had questions. What is it that you guys want to do? Who is it that you want to use? How many matches, et cetera, et cetera. What's the travel going to be like? How long are they going to stay? All that sort of stuff. It seemed like they were really gung-ho about making it work. Because when I had asked them for some top tier talent, like for example, I asked for Naito, I asked for Liger, guys like that who, Liger's of course legend. Naito at that point was probably one of the most popular names on the roster. There was no pushback, so they were very, very easy to deal with there. But as soon as we got through those preliminary negotiations, it was kind of like, well, you got our guys, now make it happen. So I was kind of taken aback for a minute, like whoa, like I've never actually run my own show with huge production. So what is it that we can do here? So it became more of a how can Jebailey and I make this work? How can we make it happen? And I remember we had asked everyone available, like you said, we'd used FGC people primarily to make this event work. And New Japan was very hands-off. I think in the end, when we kind of announced the card and we had announced that we were kind of doing record attendance numbers for an event at Daytona Beach, that's when they started to promote it a little bit from their social accounts. But it was difficult to not have access to, proper staffing or a ring or the referees or translators. So it really fell on myself, Jebailey, and all the members that were helping make that event work. We didn't quite know how big of an undertaking it would be until the day of. And that's when I think it was like Seglia was saying like, we can't set this up. Like I don't even know if we can make this setup work for today, let alone for Showtime. And I can't remember what it is that we had done. I don't know how often we were announcing that there's gonna be a bit of a delay, but I remember 10 minutes went by, 15 minutes went by, half hour went by, and we had to keep just telling people hang in with us, we'll get it eventually. And somehow people hung with it, they stuck with it, they forgave us. We did the show and it worked out.
there was a lot of flubs that we had learned from. But for what they accomplished, 10-0, shout outs to that company, and Spencer and everyone behind the scenes that made that show sing. And Kenny, leading up to it, he did all the translating, bringing out the wrestlers. We had about 2,500 people in that arena, which I didn't really understand the power of that. For a non-WWE show is a pretty big number. And we put the show together, we ran an hour behind, but everyone had the time of their lives. They were so happy.
What did you guys think of the show tonight?
It was great apart from you.
The show happened, we had a great time. And then January comes around, like, hey, we're definitely gonna do another show, and it's gonna be bigger and better. The second year, he's like, all right, new company's being formed. I'm gonna try to get you a show with them. Let's see how it goes. And then it was another phone call. We're doing the show. This is how we're promoting it. AEW's handling everything. And just that breath of fresh air of like, holy shit, this company with experience is gonna run like everything. This is a real partnership where I run the gaming side, they do the wrestling.
I'd always wanted to do it again, but only if we were able to guarantee a hard start time where if we say we're going to start at 8, let's start at 8 kind of thing, and just make sure that there was always going to be ample time and to prepare, ample time to get the talent in, ample time for everything. And that's why I think it took a couple of years for us to do it again, but with AEW.
I remember sitting down. I remember going there while they were setting up the whole beach theme and everything, and just like being there watching production set up, and me just sitting there going like, this is gonna be a crazy show. And then like the day of the event, watching like the Young Bucks and everybody like wrestling and just being there and a part of it, like just watching it right there. The CEO part of me like was just like, it's so dope to see the black and gold all together and it'd be like two like AEW's and our colors. So like in my head, I'm just like, it's so dope to see this. But then also at the same time, it's like, oh, just Young Bucks just super kick that guy. So it was dope to see, especially like this is gonna be like the future of wrestling. This is gonna be every big promotion's like competition right here. And it's gonna be amazing to see how this grows. So the way like I kind of like attributed it was like, that was the year. That was like AEW's airport hangar.
The spread of COVID-19 would force CEO, as well as most of the offline fighting game community, to shut down for nearly 2 years. In 2021, it was announced that CEO would make its return home to Orlando, Florida, after an absence of over 800 days. With being one of the first events trying to make a comeback and the FGC still having concerns and fears over running such a large offline event in a new COVID-19 world, what challenges did the CEO team face, and would the FGC even be ready to return at all?
When I announced December this year was going to happen, I'm just like, how's this going to go, right? What games are people still playing, right? So I wanted to start small, knowing I was still in the Wyndham. So I capped the number based on like 2017 numbers of what was comfortable, and then going, all right, we're going to host only 10 games this year. This is the space we have. We'll be able to lay it out. All right, now let's see how it sells. And I put together a little trailer with Gareth. We filmed it in my house. When I announced that registration's live, all I had to do is click one button. My PayPal just, and then refresh attendees, 800 in the first 4 minutes. Refresh attendees, 2,000. I'm like, what the is going on? Like, none of us saw that coming.
Alex definitely felt like he wasn't sure what the feedback would be like as far as having the registration open, and maybe people don't want to sign up just yet. They might want to wait until the last minute. Who knows? Realistically, I think he was expecting like 1,000 people, and I was like, no, I think it's gonna be great, man. I think it's gonna be great. I think you're gonna have another regular size CEO event, but it even exceeded my expectations. I think some of those games sold out within the first few minutes. I think we were all kind of blown away there and kind of in awe of the support from the community and how much they wanted to go to a CEO event.
And I had to cap it, right? And in my mind, the other thought was, what if I didn't have a cap? Would 20,000 people have freaking signed up? And I go, all right, here's $500,000 to the hotel, cancel the contract, let me move it somewhere else because the money's there. But I think I made the right decision. I wasn't greedy about it, and now it's working out. We're still balancing out to about 3,200 registered, and then going to open up the rest of spectator passes until we hit 70% of capacity of what the Wyndham can hold. Because I'm comfortable with that. My attendees and staff will be comfortable with that too.
I think CEO trying to run in 2020 in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic it's challenging in expected ways in considering the pandemic, and it's challenging in ways that I don't think Alex or even a lot of other people thought were going to exist up front. Like, for instance, I am not traveling this year. Everyone is chasing the idea of what CEO is supposed to be, while intentionally running a scaled down version of what CEO has been that might recapture those kind of old vibes and old presentations and might not. It's going to be a unique product, for lack of a better way to say it. And as they encounter being in Florida, having aggressive limitations on what can and can't be done in terms of trying to protect the attendees and pushing back against that as much as they can, to the point where Alex is requiring vaccination. And yes, he has to my understanding, legal reasons also offer that you can just get a test and prove you're negative, which is different than a blanket vaccination only attendance policy. It is a strong step forward towards that. And I know they've been committed to actually having hand sanitizer, and they're doing their mask requirements, and they're doing reduced pool sizes, and they are doing a much smaller total attendance cap than they have traditionally had in that space.
I'm hoping for this CEO to succeed more than anyone, especially considering like all the obstacles that us as a team have faced leading into the event. We're trying to do right by the community, because at the end of the day, CEO is community effort, Orlando. So trying to make it safe for not just those of us working the event, but for those attending. And I really want this to succeed more than anything, for not just the community standpoint, but like for everyone moving forward. COVID kind of put us in a shell again, and now this is us spreading our wings all over again. And I want us to soar.
DP gets baited. Just starts rising. He drops a combo though. Mono back away.
No, he ran into it. This is one guy. The throw is going to do it. Mono is the champion.
Champion Street Fighter 5 2021 gets it done.
It feels amazing. It feels even more amazing that the fact that I won. So yeah, it's good to be back to offline. It's definitely the best thing out of this is that like more than 25, if you can see on the background, these are only half of them. Like more than 25 to 30 Puerto Ricans came out. A lot of them made top 48, top 24, top 16, top 8s, me included. And I mean, I couldn't be prouder. Like all of Puerto Rico like showed off this year. We've already proven that we can do an event during pandemic. Like this is an example, First Attack's an example, Climax. And I'm pretty sure that as long as people like follow the guidelines and protocols, and that the organizers, you know, they make themselves responsible to host this type of event. I know it's a logistic nightmare, and I know it's a lot more staffing, a lot more security just to make sure and ensure that everything goes well. But I am so sure that offline events can come back.
Okay, oh no. Oh my God! That might do it. Hold on. That's gonna do it. And J7 Shaw has won the tournament. Shaking the rope. Pat. Oh my God, bro! You can feel.
We really have to understand is a lot of people were stuck home for 2 years, whether it was staff, attendees, players, and we were just ready to put on the best event and come back strong. And I don't think we could have come back any stronger than we did. My favorite thing of this CEO out of any other CEO, there was more first-time attendees, I think, this year than any CEO in history. I had at least 500 people ask me for pictures or selfies that said, this is my first CEO and I never want to miss one of your events again. And I never knew how much fun the FGC was. So just couldn't be happier, man. This is a pretty incredible weekend.
Please stay healthy, everyone safe, and I love each and every one of you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching my documentary on the history of CEO. Many thanks to my patrons for making docs like this a reality. If you'd like to join them in supporting my work, you can do so over at patreon.com/holdbacktoblock. And if you're looking for something else to watch, why not check out my documentary on the making of Killer Instinct's reboot in 2013. Also, an additional thanks to our special contributor Fightstick, who wants to shout out Ultra Chen TV for their 10.5-year run. Go check out their channel over at youtube.com/UltraChenTV.